This illustrates a startling gap in how businesses age. In the US, a 40-year-old manufacturing plant typically employs 7 times as many workers as a new facility. But in India, a plant of the same age shrinks, employing just half the workers. To find the source of this stagnation, economists studied a group of Indian textile mills like this one. They provided half the mills with basic management training and tracked the results. The trained mills saw their annual profits jump by 17%, generating an additional 1.5 crore rupees every year. The training was remarkably basic. Managers were simply taught to log their raw materials and set a recurring schedule for machine repairs. Despite these massive, proven profit increases, Indian mill owners frequently refuse to delegate these simple tasks. They insist on making every decision themselves, keeping the reins of the company held tight. A survey of 126 companies around Mumbai revealed the result of this refusal to delegate. Almost every single business was exclusively family-run. Management roles are filled by surname. Fearing theft, owners prioritize bloodlines over competence. This reliance creates a rigid ceiling. A firm's size is tethered strictly to available male family members, completely decoupling company expansion from actual market demand. Owners believe that without a functioning court to recover stolen funds, any trust placed in an outsider is a liability they cannot afford. Indian businesses end up stunting their own growth as a survival mechanism. They avoid scaling to ensure they never have to rely on a legal safety net that they know is non-existent. The scale of this legal void is difficult to overstate. India is buried under a backlog of over 50 million pending cases. An estimate suggested clearing this mountain of litigation would take 300 years, assuming courts worked at their current pace. This delay has a devastating human cost. Consider Sopan Gaikwad, who entered a land dispute in 1968 after discovering his property had been illegally mortgaged by a previous owner. Gaikwad spent 50 years fighting through trial courts and high courts. By the time the Supreme Court finally scheduled a hearing in 2021, his legal team had to inform the bench that Gaikwad had passed away. While a commercial dispute in Singapore is typically resolved in 150 days, a business in India can expect to wait 1,500 days for a resolution. The Indian legal system effectively traps capital and time in an infinite loop, rendering the concept of a resolution functionally extinct for the average citizen. This paralysis forces businesses to make inefficient choices every day. Many refuse to work with outside suppliers because they fear decades of litigation if a contract is ever breached. That same fear makes them extremely reluctant to hire new employees. In India, the legal complexity of firing a staff member often makes the process nearly impossible. This is evident in the label case of Uttam Manohar. He was caught sleeping on duty for the 4th time in 1983 and fired, but the resulting legal battle lasted 22 years. It took multiple appeals, reaching all the way to the Supreme Court, to uphold a simple termination for neglect of duty. To avoid these risks, companies often try to manufacture every component themselves, sacrificing the benefits of specialized expertise just to maintain control. These defensive tactics create a closed, inefficient loop. The inability to trust the courts makes scaling a business a dangerous gamble, keeping the entire corporate sector smaller than it should be. When every textile mill loses a 17% profit jump and every plant stays 7 times smaller than its potential, the cumulative effect is a national disaster. This structural paralysis is estimated to drain 10% of India's total GDP every single year. A major cause is a massive vacancy in the lower courts. Despite high national unemployment, roughly 20% of district and lower court judge positions remain empty. The system struggles to find qualified candidates. In 2019, when exams were held for district judges in Jammu and Kashmir and Tamil Nadu, not a single lawyer was able to pass the minimum requirements. At the top of the hierarchy, the collegium system creates its own delays. Because there are no legal deadlines for the government to approve recommended judges, critical positions can remain vacant for years, while files sit in bureaucratic limbo. Paradoxically, the government is the biggest source of the backlog. Over half of all pending cases involve government departments, many of them routine disputes over internal employee promotions and pensions that should be solved with a simple signature. This combination of unqualified candidates at the bottom and bureaucratic stalling at the top creates a system that actively sabotages India's economic progress. The absurdity of this backlog is perfectly captured by the case of V.M. Saudagar, who was fired from the railways in 1988 for allegedly accepting a bribe of just 50 rupees. The government spent decades appealing the case through the entire court hierarchy. Saudagar passed away in 2017, and it wasn't until 2025, nearly 40 years after the alleged bribe, that the Supreme Court finally cleared his name. The Supreme Court has gradually moved away from its mandate to resolve constitutional crises. Today, it is flooded with thousands of petty appeals like Saudagar's, leaving the nation's most critical legal questions to wait in line. Unleashing India's true economic potential requires a functional legal safety net that allows strangers to trust each other, far more than any business subsidy or software tool. Without a way to resolve disputes, the country's growth will remain trapped by its own courts.